Talking corners, summer darlings, schedule predictions, remembering Preston Dennard, Dr. Death, and Alex Barron. This is RamView. Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Tarosian, and this is RamView, the May the 10th, 2023 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident, need help, got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. Or check out KistlerLawFirm.com. That's one word. KistlerLawFirm.com. That's Kistler Law. They've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having yourself some auto issues, get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. All right. So first things first, answering questions that I asked and didn't answer last week, or actually on Monday, was I said, how many offensive linemen do you like to keep? And that was a question that kind of bounced around between me and a friend. And I'd like to see, given what happened last year, I'd like to see the Rams keep 9 offensive linemen. I'm not hung up on starters and all that kind of stuff, but these are the 9 guys I'd like to see the Rams keep. Obviously, Rob Havenstein at right tackle. The Rams have paid for Joe Noteboom to be a left tackle. I don't think left guard is the kind of money they're paying him. They're paying him left tackle money. So people are talking about him moving to left guard. That's a real possibility, especially when you don't know what his situation is coming back from the torn Achilles. Alaric Allen, tackle or guard, starter, maybe. Yeah, definitely. I want to see if he's still on the roster. I want Brandon Allen still the starting center for Brian Allen, I'm sorry, for the money he's being paid. He should be the starting center. I'd like to see Steve Avila starting, given that he was drafted at number 36. And then you got Coleman Shelton, who's played well enough to start. You want to see Logan Bruss develop. He is wearing Dennis Harrah's number 60. So you would like to see him develop a little of the Herc attitude and see if that pick that we drafted him at 104, 103 last year has paid off. And then Warren McClendon, you want to see him develop. And I'm not ready to give up on Tremaine Ankrum. That gives the Rams 3 deep guys when it comes to center. That gives them depth at tackle. That gives them depth at guard. That's what I would want. I don't know what you would want, but I didn't answer that question on Monday, and I felt really, really bad. So believe it or not, in getting prepped for everything, I, over the last 3 days, have watched each of the Rams' preseason games. Basically, I'm refamiliarizing myself with what was 2022, and I've just finished the preseason. I'm going to watch regular season starting tomorrow and just work 1 game a day just to get a refresher on what we saw. But as I was watching the preseason games, I finished my 3rd one this afternoon, the one in Cincinnati. Remember the fight that broke out in the combined workout where the big drama was, is Aaron Donald going to get suspended, or are they going to lose any time with Aaron Donald? And then a week later, the whole thing was over with. But one of the things that happens every summer, and that's why I've created the Nelson Spruce Award, is there's always summer darlings, right? There's somebody that people fall in love with, and they get so jazzed when they make a play, not really remembering sometimes that these summer darlings are 3rd stringers, not even 2nd stringers, and they're playing against 3rd stringers and 2nd stringers. Some of the names that popped over the last couple days, and I wrote down Roger Carter Jr. This guy is no longer a Ram. Roger Carter Jr. was an undrafted free agent. He got some run at tight end during the summer. Got cut, got put on the practice squad, and eventually he was released. And Roger Carter is no longer with the Rams, but they were really talking like, man, this guy could be special, and everyone was in love with him. How about safety Daniel Isom? There was talk about Daniel Isom really making that Rams roster last year. He didn't. he got cut. A lot of these guys spent a week or so on the practice squad and then moved on. But Daniel Isom was the guy in the opening game against the Chargers that stripped the ball. Easton Stick had made the throw. The Chargers were driving, and it would have been the game-winning drive. And Isom kind of got there at the same time as the receiver and kind of pulled it out of his hands. And him and Grant Haley and all those guys, Deron Lowe, and all those guys ran to the end of the field and got their moment, and they all got cut. Grant Haley did stick around. Then there was Bryce Perkins. And Bryce Perkins got a lot of playing time last year because even John Wolford was banged up during the preseason. And I've made my argument about Bryce Perkins that I don't know how you keep him on the active roster for 2 years and then you don't even pass him through waivers because you're so afraid to lose him. He's on the 53. And then after 2 years, you start him one game, and that game is in Kansas City against the eventual Super Bowl champs, not in SoFi, but in Arrowhead. And that's where he makes his first NFL start and his only NFL start. And then they just decided, hey, we're done. We're done with Bryce Perkins. And I just thought that was really weird. Now, yeah, the upside of Stetson Bennett is better than Bryce Perkins. I agree. But you invested that much time. I just didn't get one shot, and that one shot being in KC being the deciding factor. How about a running back named A.J. Rose? Everyone remember A.J. Rose? Yeah, he had some nice runs last year. Raymond Calais, Braden Thomas. He was a down lineman, edge guy, defensive end type. And all these guys had their moments in the preseason, and people salivated. You could hear them in the booth talking about these guys. I always give a hard time to, not that he hears me, but Colin Cowherd I said he has this man crush on Joe Burrow, that he probably sends him flowers hoping Burrow will call him up. But during the preseason last year, Mina Kimes, the reporter for ESPN, who's in the booth with Whitworth and who's the kid with the ears, right? The dude with the ears, NFL Network. I keep forgetting his name. He's about that tall. Anyway, Kier Thomas was Mina Kimes' crush last year, and she talked about how, oh man, he's really going to possibly make an impact on this roster. He's had a great camp and everything. Kier Thomas did make the Rams. He's still on the roster. Last year, he played 71 snaps, no sacks, no hits, no hurries. Okay. But he did make the roster, and he was kind of a darling last year. And then, of course, Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams had a really good preseason, and he did get significant playing time. He played 342 snaps in that rotation. He had a sack, 3 hits, and 5 hurries. That's not spectacular. We talked about Jonah Williams. He's back, but he was one of the darlings last year that people were talking about. And, of course, the ultimate darling was, I forgot Chris Garrett. They were raving about Chris Garrett, how he really needs his shot because he was kind of the darling on the defensive side in 2021. In 2022, he came to camp. He was a little banged up, and he was just too light. And he came off the edge, and he got pressure against a Bengal quarterback in the last preseason game. And that's the Chris Garrett we've been waiting for. That's the Chris Garrett we're going to see. Chris Garrett got that against a third-string left tackle that's probably not even in the league anymore. And everyone was getting all excited about Chris Garrett. And then the ultimate is Lance McCutcheon. Lance McCutcheon had 2 touchdowns, 15 receptions, and over 200 receiving yards in 3 games last August. You project that out, what would that be? Let's times that by 5, and you got a guy that's had a pretty significant year. That's a great start for a career. But in the regular season, he wasn't playing against third stringers. In the regular season, when Lance McCutcheon got activated, he was lined up offensively for 56 snaps. He was targeted 4 times, and he had 0 catches. And so summer darlings are just that, just like summer romances. We all have people we meet during the summer at the beach, at summer camp, and we're kind of interested in them for that week or that day. And then reality sets in and you never see them again. And I'm hoping Lance McCutcheon develops. I'm hoping the Rams can get some clicks out of Kier Thomas and Jonah Williams, but be careful who your summer darlings are. And you can see it already developing even now. Right now, is the teams having some people talk about summer darlings, and they're really in love with Byron Young and his not the team, the fan base, Byron Young and his Dollar Tree background. Okay, keeping it moving here. Let's look at the Ram cornerback room. We're doing one position room each session. And let's look at the Rams corners. And this is really top to bottom right here. Kobe Durant, Darian Kendrick, Robert Rochelle, and Sean Jolly are the veterans. Drafted Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, and then four of the 26, 27 undrafted free agent signings the Rams made were at cornerback. Tamarcus Davis, Tyon Davis, Tulsa, Jordan Jones, Rhode Island, Cameron McCutcheon, West Carolina. Not going to go too deep into those guys, but of all those guys that were there last year, Kobe Durant probably stood out the best out of South Carolina State. 5'11", 180. He played a lot of slot corner last year. And with Jalen Ramsey gone, it'll be interesting to see if maybe he morphs into that spot, because Darian Kendrick is a boundary corner. And that means boundary corner. And I'm not talking down. But these are terms that have come into the football lexicon. Slot corner is obviously, he's the old nickel guy, right? That takes the slot receiver. And you need a different skill set to guard those guys. That's a tough job. Boundary corner is what it means. You're outside at the numbers, and you got the sideline to help you out. Darian Kendrick's a boundary corner. Kobe Durant runs 5'11", 180. Darian Kendrick's similar in size, 6'1", 190, or 6 foot 190. And then Robert Rochelle, who didn't play offensively or defensively at all last year. I think a couple dozen snaps, maybe. He's a boundary corner, but the one thing Robert Rochelle has is a 6'2", 195 frame. And this was a guy that was getting quality minutes before he got hurt in 2021. And it makes me sick that they're ready to give up on him so quick, and get the Terrell Burgess treatment. So we'll see. Sean Jolly, he's practice squad guy, Appalachian State, 5'9", 175. There was really no real defensive metric for him, special teamer. Okay, so we go to THT, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. They say he's feisty, all those things. I'm really good with the pick, right? But boy, he's already the steal, again, the steal of the draft. 5'8", 178. I have no problem with that. If a 5'8", 178 corner is athletic and feisty, so to speak, in that Pat Thomas mode, I'm down. I have no problem with his height. And the scouting report says he thrives in the soft zone, which, hey, you're speaking the Rams language, but he's not necessarily a slot corner. He has played it, but he might struggle against somebody larger in the slot. Again, that's just reading into it his size, where, besides being super athletic and feisty, right? There's the word, right? That's what you say. Do you ever call a 6'2", 195 corner feisty? Is it always the sub 6 foot corner that is feisty, right? And so Durant, Kendrick, Hodges, Tomlinson, and then Rochelle would be the key guys in the Rams cornerback room. Sean Jolly, and then you get to the undrafted free agents. Tamarcus Davis out of Arizona State, he's 6 foot 180. If he's in the Pac-12, it means he was passed on, so he's got some experience. Tyon Davis, Tulsa, 6'1", 180. Jordan Jones, Rhode Island. He was a guy the Rams interviewed pre-draft, and they signed him, 6 foot 180. And then the interesting one here is out of West Carolina, Cameron McCutcheon. There's another McCutcheon name there. Cameron McCutcheon, 6'3", 200 pounds. That's a nice size for a corner. I'm wondering what they're thinking they're going to do with him. Probably, moving back to safety a little bit if he can run. Everything's hybrid nowadays, right? Everything's hybrid. So, all right, let's look at it. The schedule gets dropped tomorrow. The big games and the international games were dropped today, and we'll get to those in the back half of the show here. But we've been working through the divisions the Rams play, right? play the NFC West, they play the NFC East, they play the AFC North, and now we're going to look at the remnants, the 3 teams they play that are kind of random. I don't know how that computer spits them out, but they're playing Green Bay, Indianapolis, and New Orleans. And that doesn't mean they're not playing the NFC North, they're not playing the AFC South, and they're not playing the NFC South, but they're going to be playing Green Bay, Indianapolis, and New Orleans. When I looked at the NFC West, I saw worst case scenario 2 and 4. Yeah, you got to beat the Cardinals twice. If you don't beat the Cardinals twice, you need to look at your coaching staff. There's something wrong there if you don't beat the Cardinals twice. You need to beat them twice. If you lose to them twice, you really got a problem. But I do think because the 49ers situation is unsettled, and I think the Seahawks are a year away from putting all that talent together that they have, that one of those teams, maybe both of them, are vulnerable for the Rams to pick off a win. And if they can go 3-3 in the division, I think that's a real possibility. I think there's potential to pick off one win from each of those teams. If Sam Darnold is starting at quarterback for the 49ers and the Rams play a game where they don't shoot themselves in the foot and Tyler Higbee doesn't hand the ball to a defensive back and say, here, let's turn this into a pick 6, I think the Rams might have a shot. But we got to see, right? So best guess scenario, I'm saying the Rams go 3-3 in the West. In the NFC East, there is a possibility. They can go 3-1. Washington starting Sam Howell. Dallas with Dak is not that impressive. And the Giants, the Giants are just okay. I think they went to the playoffs a year too early. And so could the Rams go 3-1? They're not going to beat Philly, so we know that's a loss. But to be modest and to keep things clear, let's say the Rams go 2-2 against the NFC East. That makes them 5-5. And then on Monday, we broke down the AFC North. And I don't see the Rams beating Pittsburgh. I do not see the Rams beating Cincy. And I do not see the Rams right now, depending on when that game is played, because everything is based on when you play. I don't see them beating the Ravens. Maybe when Lamar Jackson's on the IR in late December, if the game's around that time, the Rams can beat Baltimore. But if they're playing them in September, I think Baltimore in September and early October are just going to be everyone's darling, everyone's favorite, and we're going to see people rave about how Baltimore all the way, and then the injuries are going to come in, and then everyone's going to kind of slink away, go back to their regular favorites. So looking at the remnants, I can see the Rams going into those games at about 6-8, 3 wins against the NFC West, 2 wins against the NFC East, 1 win against the North. That makes them 6-8. Pretty realistic, right? Going to Green Bay again. The Rams have gone to Green Bay for 4 consecutive seasons. Now, they went in 2020, but that was the playoff game that was played in January, but it was for the 2020 season. In 2021, they went there. They lost there. In 2022, they were there last year. They lost there. And in 2023, the Rams are going back there. I mean, if the NFL wants to establish a rivalry between the Rams and Packers, that's cool. But hey, how about having them come to SoFi once in a while? This is 4 straight years the Rams are going to Lambeau, and they're 0-3 already up in Lambeau this decade, so to speak. And we don't know when they're going to play. And that's hard. I don't think Green Bay is going to be very good. I like their offensive line. They got a good running back. But I think everything else is very mediocre. And they're going to develop. They're going to be a good team again. But I think this is a year they're vulnerable. And Vegas has them projected at 7.5 wins. I think the Rams could win, but it's in Lambeau. And so for right now, I'm going to pick against the Rams winning this game. Also, the league has the Rams playing in Indianapolis, where they played to open 2021. If you remember this, remember the Rams had a lead and the Colts came back, and there was that snap that went off Nick Scott's thigh that was recovered in the end zone for a touchdown, and then the Rams had to rally and win that game. If you remember, and you probably don't, everyone wanted Nick Scott released at that moment, because at that point he was still playing special teams. Nobody liked Nick Scott. 2 months later, Nick Scott was their guy, right? Everyone was a Nick Scott fan. And that was a stronger Colt team with Carson Wentz than I think this Colt team is going to be this year. The Colts are projected to go 6.5 wins by Vegas. And I can guarantee if Anthony Richardson is playing, it's going to be exciting. But exciting doesn't necessarily mean the Colts will be successful. You know, they got Jonathan Taylor. They got some receivers on offense. And that line is pretty good. But there are holes all over the defense. And then Richardson himself as a whole, as a guy that's only started one season of college football, didn't really dominate. Is throwing about 300 passes at big-time level. I don't want to go too deep on this one. An experienced Rams offense and a team that's telling us that they're not tanking should be able to win this game in Indy, and that would be 7 wins for the Rams in 2023. And then the third team they're playing is New Orleans. Now, I know you have to respect Vegas. It sounds weird for a guy who doesn't bet. You have to respect Vegas because they're pretty good at this stuff. New Orleans is projected to win 9.5 games. I don't see how. I don't like their defense. It was middle of the pack last year, and now it's older. Marcus Lattimore has been on a downward slide, especially in coverage. He turns 27 next week. I know that seems young, but he's got mileage on him. Tyrann Mathieu, Honey Badger, he turns 31 this Saturday. Cam Jordan turns 34 this Friday. They're all older, and and they made some good draft picks. They had a good draft. It's probably the most underrated draft, but I like their quarterback and the receivers, but I just think this team is not ready. And I don't know what Alvin Kamara, who dipped last year, dipped in his snaps, had some injuries. You've gotten your 5 years out of him, and of course they're paying him. But how much does he left have in the tank for a 17-game season? You play Alvin Kamara in September, and you might have the Alvin Kamara of 2019 or 2018. You play Alvin Kamara in December, and you might not even see Alvin Kamara on the field. I think the Rams at SoFi can steal this one. And then we could hear, everyone complain how somehow, for some reason, Nicole Roby-Coleman did a pass interference penalty in some NFC championship game. I don't know. I don't know where people get that. So when you think about it, could the Rams win in Green Bay? Yeah, they could. They could win 2 of 3 in the beatable version of the NFC East. They're not going to beat the Eagles, but they could win 2 of 3. They could win all 3 of those games. They could. And that means if they can pull out one win, if they can pull out that win in Green Bay, if they can maybe eke out one more division win, if they can go 3-1 against the NFC East, that means the Rams could, with everything going well, get 10 wins. They could get 10 wins. If they just are okay, they can get 8 wins. And I think 7-10 is also very realistic if the defense doesn't do any developing. I think the offense is good enough to get them 7 wins. But it's, again, when the schedule comes out tomorrow, it'll be about when you play and who you play and where you play them at. Well, we know where they're playing most of their games. All right, I'm Joe Terosian, and this is RamView. I was a sports writer for 21 years, various newspaper sites, did a little magazine stuff and websites. And then I was one of the founding members at Mid-Valley Sports. They cover the NFL now. They're in the room with the Chargers. Tim and Dwayne do a good job there. You can check that out on midvalleysports.com. I do RamView with my sponsors, Mid-Valley, Kistler Law Firm, and Temple City Auto Repair. Be sure to check them out. I also write books. I've written 7 books, and those are all available on Amazon. A couple of high school football novels. They've been well received. And so if you want to support the show, this and my books on Amazon. And I do all this to support myself as a day pastor, as a day job. I am a pastor of a small church in Burbank Faith Nazarene, and also known here online and all the platforms as Burbank Faith Virtual. And you could check us out there. And that's what I've been doing for 34 years. So I am blessed that I get to talk about God, and I get to talk about sports. And when I talk about sports, I get to talk about the Rams. So I'm pretty fortunate right now to do these things. All right. Real quick here, some Ram news or former Rams news. John Wolford is signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And when I think of a quarterback room that features Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, and the Wolf, all I can think of is hello, Caleb Williams. That's all I can think of. Honestly, where do you see the Buccaneers going this year? The NFC South, they could get some traction in there because it's the NFC South. But man, Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, and the Wolf. The Browns signed safety Rodney McLeod Jr. Rodney McLeod, at the age of 32, he had a really good season last year with the Colts. He was, according to PFF, Pro Football Focus, he was the 7th rated safety out of 88 in the NFL. And he played one season with the Colts, and after 6 solid seasons, he had played in Philly. In fact, he won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, and it was with the Eagles that he signed with after leaving the Rams. Rodney McLeod, which is he's kind of forgotten, but he kind of began that trend of Rams getting 4 years out of a safety and move on. What do they say about a TV show? 6 seasons in a movie, right? Rodney McLeod was an undrafted free agent who made the Rams in 2012. He was with the team for 4 years, 3 as a starter, and guess what? He left as a free agent. They had TJ McDonald, who needs him, right? Left TJ McDonald go because they got John Johnson. This is just how the Rams work with their safeties. Let John Johnson go because they had Taylor Rapp, right? And Nick Scott. And they let Nick Scott and Taylor Rapp go because they got Russ Yeast and Quentin Lake and Jordan Fuller. It's just how these things work. But Rodney McLeod is still playing at a high level, and a good dude. You want the best for him. It's interesting because with the Browns, he ends up replacing John Johnson, who's still on the market. The Giants placed Terrell Burgess on the PUP list. Burgess, after the Rams cut him midseason last year, basically just worked special teams for the Giants. You go back and again, that's why when I talk about Robert Rochelle getting the Burgess treatment, Burgess in 2020, up to the time he busted his ankle, he was getting playing time for the Rams. People really liked him, and it looked like he was trending. And he was a 3rd round pick. That's a premium pick for the Rams. And then he just disappeared, didn't play at all hardly in 2021 and half the season in 2022. And then he was gone. And it's kind of the same route Robert Rochelle's going, right? 2021, Robert Rochelle is playing. And then he gets hurt, and then he just completely disappears. Last year, only a special teamer. And so you're wondering what the Rams are thinking about Robert Rochelle. Is it going to be the same route as Terrell Burgess? Things haven't been quite the same for Terrell Burgess since 2020, and you wish the best for him with the Giants. So around the NFL, the schedule will be released tomorrow at 5 p.m. On May 11th. But today they released the overseas games, which I could care less about. The best news about all the overseas games is that the Rams aren't playing in any of them. There's the advantage of going, 5-12. Maybe nobody wants to see you. The London games are Atlanta, Jacksonville and Buffalo, Baltimore and Tennessee. Jacksonville twice. In fact, there had been talk, probably not now because Trevor Lawrence is in town, but there was talk about Jacksonville being the first NFL team to move to London. They play a lot of games in London. As this team gets better, I'm wondering if ownership is going to balk at always having to go overseas. While it helps the brand, there's a tyranny of distance on this planet, no matter how fast you fly. And that tyranny enforces itself with jet lag. And so it's not always the best for teams to be traveling all the time, especially, in season. The Germany games, which everyone's high on, Miami and Kansas City, and Indianapolis and New England. If they released a Mexico game, I didn't see it. I did not see a game in Mexico scheduled. Maybe I missed it. They're playing the day after Thanksgiving, which is usually a college football day, Black Friday, and that's Miami at the Jets. And then on Christmas Day, which I'm so grateful for, it's Giants against Philly. I think Philly, and they're at Philly. I think Philly's going to work them, and I can, hang out and not feel that pressure that I didn't watch that game. There's some games you watch tooth and nail, and there's some games you watch with family in the room. And that's what the Giants-Eagles feels like on Christmas Day. And then Christmas Eve is Chiefs-Bengals, which is really interesting on New Year's Eve, is considering it's so late in the season, and those teams could be playing each other again within a month. Pretty interesting. We're today is the 10th. We are about 12 days away from OTAs beginning, May 22nd, 23rd, starting again the 25th, May 30th, 31st, and June 2nd, June 5th, and 8th. Mandatory minicamp is June 13th through 15th. So this thing's getting real. And again, start picking out your darlings, because everyone's going to start talking about their darlings. Byron Young's already on there, and I'm sure some others are going to be hitting the market there as far as, hey, these are our darlings. We love this guy. Okay, let's wrap up this show as we hit the 30-minute mark. Let's wrap up this show with On This Day. It's been a Stone Groove show, but we're not quite done yet, because we haven't done On This Day in Rams history. On this day in Rams history, the Rams signed Dr. Death, UCLA safety Oscar Edwards. As anybody, now Steve Ramirez, I know you have to remember Dr. Death. He used to play safety for UCLA. In fact, he won a Rose Bowl when Vermeil was there. And the very next year, he was an All-American under Terry Donahue. And he wore the towel, in his waist. It was a skull and bones, and they called him Dr. Death. Now, the Rams signed him. He never played for the Rams. In fact, he didn't play down in the NFL. But here's the great thing. Dr. Death literally became a doctor. He got his doctorate in business. And he's been a successful educator at Long Beach State and City College, and is involved in all kinds of programs. He's had a great life. And you have to wonder what people would say if a safety called themselves Dr. Death nowadays. I don't know if that one would fly. But, for a guy that was a USC fan, the guy that stood out for me at UCLA in those days on defense, besides Mano Tuiasosopo, was Dr. Death, Oscar Edwards. So I wanted to get that in there. It says the Rams signed him on this day in 1977. We don't know when he was released. I couldn't find that information. I searched for it. On this day in 1984, this is a great story. The Rams signed as an undrafted the Rams re-signed Preston Dennard to a multi-year contract on this day in 1984. Dennard is a wide receiver for the Rams, and he had been an undrafted free agent in 1978. He was a special teams guy out of New Mexico. And you'd see him. He's just not a special teams guy, because the receiver the Rams had, the young receiver the Rams had after Ron Jesse, Willie Miller, Billy Waddy, was Dwight Scales. But Dwight Scales was mostly a special teamer. And by 1979, Dennard leapfrogged Dwight Scales. Dwight Scales was cut, ended up in San Diego, and Dennard was there. Willie Miller went down, Ron Jesse went down, Ron Smith, I think, was a rookie. And Preston Dennard became a starter in 1979 and was a key player on that Rams run to the Super Bowl. He started 11 games, and he really showed great hands. He wasn't a burner, but he did a great job. And he was a starter for the Rams all the way through 6 years with the Rams, 1978 through 84. He was a 5-year starter. He caught 189 passes with the Rams, 16 yards a catch, 21 touchdowns. But he spent 1984 and 1985 with the Bills and Packers, and retired at the age of 30. But here was the interesting thing, is on this day in 1984, the Rams signed Dennard to a multi-year contract. He played that 1983 season with them, that first year with Dickerson and John Robinson. But then less than 3 months later, on August 1st, that same year, that same summer, they traded him to Buffalo for a 5th-round pick in 1985. Now, that's not bad work. You trade a 29-year-old receiver that was undrafted, and you still get a 5th-round pick. Well, it was a bummer seeing Dennard go. I hated seeing Dennard go. But the guy the Rams got with that 5th-round pick a year later in 1985 turned into the 113th pick overall, and he was a guy named Kevin Green. And Kevin Green, of course, we know what Kevin Green became. He had an outstanding Hall of Fame career. And so that pretty awesome. That Preston Dennard, Don Klosterman signs Preston Dennard, and when Don Klosterman goes, Dennard.
It was a stone groove, my man.
Yeah, it is a stone groove. Preston Dennard translates into Hall of Fame edge guy Kevin Green. I thought that was cool. Class dude, Preston Dennard. Great post career. Just a really high end quality dude. And so I thought that was worth mentioning. And of course, we all know about Kevin Green. And then finally, not necessarily a stone groove. In 2010, on this day, the Rams traded tackle Alex Barron to the Dallas Cowboys for linebacker Bobby Carpenter. Okay, this was bust for bust. Carpenter in 2006 was the 18th overall selection of the Cowboys in the first round, and he was a magnificent bust. Barron was the 19th overall selection by the Rams in 2005 out of Florida State. And he was a massive bust, anytime it seemed like anytime that Steven Jackson broke off a run, you had to wait to see what penalty was called on Alex Barron. Barron played in 76 games for the Rams, started 74, mostly all of them at tackle. All of them were at tackle. For Dallas, he appeared in 11 games, only started one, and that was that. By 2011, he was bouncing around to the Saints, the Seahawks, Raiders, and never played another regular season down in the NFL. And Barron was the trifecta, where the Rams used to hit on offensive linemen. They really missed. In the 90s, they drafted Wayne Gandy. Now, Wayne Gandy was an NFL tackle. He wasn't a superstar. He wasn't Jackie Slater. He wasn't Doug France. He was an NFL tackle, and he ended up having a nice career in the NFL. Pittsburgh, too. I think he was in Pittsburgh. And then, of course, Orlando Pace. The Rams hit the jackpot when they took Orlando Pace. But after that, they drafted Alex Barron in 2006 at 19 overall. 2005, 19 overall, Alex Barron. Then they drafted Jason Smith out of Baylor, second overall in 2009. Jason Smith he's the thing that helps Jason Smith is Greg Robinson was drafted second overall in 2014. So the last three first-round tackles the Rams have drafted have all been whiffs. So be careful what you ask for when it comes to wanting the Rams to draft a tackle in the future. They've been horrible at it. So I think that's the show. And it was a stone groove to do this show. And as you folks keep clicking on and encouraging me, I say thank you very much. Sometimes I talk too fast. If I am ever talking too fast, just say, hey, Joe, you're talking too fast. When I get excited, I talk too fast. So the one thing you know is I'm not bored doing this. Be sure, we want to thank our sponsors, KisslerLawFirm.com, Temple City Auto Repair. Be sure to check out that book over my shoulder, 1951 Los Angeles Rams. Derek C. Apollo, a really good Ram podcaster, was one of the contributors to that book. It's on Amazon. Check it out. It gives you updates or insight to the Rams' first championship in Los Angeles. And, of course, you can check out my books as well. Thank you for following us. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. And if you can, leave comments and stuff as we build our footprint here. And then, thank you for whoever's been clicking on Spotify. I've noticed a slight tick. Check us out on Spotify. People have said, you got to get on Spotify. We're on Spotify, but no one else seems to find us on Spotify. All right, guys. Thank you so much for clicking on. This has been RamView. I'm Joe Terosian. God bless. Take care. And we will see you on Joe Namath Day, Friday, May the 12th.